Horrors of Dracula, in particular, the last couple of minutes, the death of Dracula, and the fight that preceded it. So we're going to go ahead. We're going to go ahead and show the video now.
Okay, so now to this point, they're following him. Dracula's got this guy's wife. That's the kind of guy Dracula is.
Well, all women are his to abuse.
Well, I don't know. Maybe his attack
He's
on.
He's getting rid of the hoe now. He doesn't need her anymore.
He's dumping the evidence.
Yes, such a
He's
misogynistic.
gonna take it back later, probably. And see the contempt, the actual brutality of it all. There's no romance. There's no, oh, what a great guy. He's a beast.
He's just throwing crap.
And by the way, that guy there, the husband, ended up playing Alfred in the later Batmans.
Yes, he did. That's a kind of connection there. Michael Gow.
Yes.
Okay, now look at what I'm really impressed with is that these guys are actually two physical specimens. They're actually running after each other. They're actually doing their own stunts here. Look at this.
Absolutely. But
yes.
That's because Christopher Lee is the man.
Yes, and Christopher Lee even did his own disintegration at the end.
Great work. With such big feet.
What is your thing with Peter Cushing's feet, man?
Dude. All right, now here it is. Look at this. These guys are like they're actually physical specimens. This kind of bugs me here. There's some kind of bizarre tension. I'm not sure I'm comfortable with this.
Well, you're supposed to be. Every man in the room was supposed to be squirming by then because.
Power. And look,
got a sneaker kiss.
Van Helsing decides his gate don't swing that way.
Now you can't say no.
Yeah, but you know when you have a fight scene like that, they had to have a bit of trust with each other to have a fight scene like that.
Well, these guys were good friends, and that's not the first movie they did together.
You know, Dracula seems a little stunned right here. Like, he was up there for just a second.
Wait, what's that curtain do? Oh.
Well, you know, it's not the only hole. And Jimmy Shanks wrote the script, and there's plenty of holes in it. But it's still an amazing movie.
And there you go, the ultimate refusal of the homoerotic attempts to hurt him.
You're absolutely right.
So he's trying to pray the gay away.
Turn against Christian doctrine. Turn against Christian doctrine.
Christian morality. And a big X as if to say, no way.
Now, that little look there, was he kind of sorry about it? That's too bad. I wish you didn't have to kind of do this.
Kind of look of regret.
Well, maybe it was like one of those things that he had to do but hated doing.
And now her stigma's
maybe
gone.
So, but you see how she became a virgin again because Dracula's dead. And apparently he's okay with it. But really, that guy's a simp.
Well, but wasn't she under Dracula's hypnotic control?
Absolutely, she was given no choice.
Yes, she was certainly under Dracula, exactly.
Not always a bad place to be.
Especially when it's Christopher
fucking Lee.
Hey, look.
And what's left?
Okay. His evil ring.
And what is the ring? Isn't it a sign of promise? Right?
That's pretty good.
Okay.
And there you go for one last thing. Christopher Lee was in Paris to witness the last public execution by guillotine back in 1939.
And he was a better man for it.
Do you think he held up his cup or something to catch some of the blood, or I don't know?
I don't know.
got it in the
Shortly
part.
thereafter, he was off in Finland fighting the Bolsheviks.
And just to explain.
Background. I might have misstated this. I did a little bit of research. Actually, canonically, I think that's a word. The next chapter in the Dracula saga is actually Brides of Dracula, and of course, Christopher Lee is not in that. But there is a death scene. There is a death scene, so that might be there might be worth covering.
It just wasn't as manly, okay? And we'll discuss.
Well, how many Draculas did Hammer make without Christopher Lee? I mean, I don't think they did too many without Christopher Lee, did they?
Two.
Well, there was the
later ones. Right?
Well, no, he finished up as Dracula, but he was in most of them, but there was no Dracula in Brides of Dracula. It was one of his disciples. Then they just kept the title because I guess they knew that they weren't going to get anybody to come to see a movie if they said The Brides of Willie or something. But
I
don't know. That depends on where it plays, I guess.
On the big screen.
But he was in the horror Dracula. Then after The Brides of Dracula was Dracula Prince of Darkness and Dracula's Risen from the Grave. He was in all those. Scars of Dracula, Taste of Blood of Dracula. Those were all Christopher Lee flicks.
1972, where he brings out his real beast. Not a great
film.
Yes,
that's true.
But he was total beast in there. Well, the one he did with Peter Cushing going with the Chinese.
Yeah, the Legend of Seven Golden Vampires.
So yeah.
Actually, Christopher Lee wasn't in that though.
Yeah, but that's really a Dracula film though too.
Well, and there is a Dracula death scene in there where and Van Helsing is involved and often the guy.
Yeah, so there's two of them.
Well, can we get back? Got a question about what we just watched there.
Yeah.
Now, you identified, what was it, Stephen Gow. We talked about Christopher Lee. We talked about...
Michael Gow, I think, isn't it?
Michael Gow? Sorry.
Yeah, that's okay.
We identified all the characters except for, now, the wife. Did the wife go on to do... Who's the woman who played the wife? Did she go on to do anything of note, or was she
It's so misogynist. I mean, when I think of... I'm sure she was an accomplished actress. When I think of Hammer, though, I'm always thinking of Barbara Shelley.
And that's not her.
Carolyn Monroe. You know, or somebody like that.
Well, forgive me for asking this, but who was the woman that got thrown in the grave? Was that the wife?
That was the wife.
That's what Eric was just asking.
Yeah, okay.
That was Michael Gow's wife. Dracula had actually kidnapped her.
Right.
And taken her back to his castle, and that's when they did the nighttime chase. Instead of like having to go across the ocean like they did in the novel, all they had to do was like right across the local border somewhere. I'm not sure how that geography worked out.
Well,
okay, so I've got everybody here, but go ahead and talk about the movie at all. The guy that wrote it, Jimmy Sangster, did a lot of work with Terrence.
Stam?
No, the famous director, Terrence Fisher. Anyway, but Jimmy Sangster was a giant in the Hammer history there, but he wrote some really, as bad as as much as I love Dracula, the horror Dracula, there's so many holes in that the script. Like in the first part where Van Helsing comes in, or not Van Helsing, but Harker comes in. He's going to kill. He's got Dracula and the female vampire laying in coffins, and instead of taking out Dracula first, he takes out the female, and then Dracula wakes up and kills him. It just doesn't make any sense to me. Well, there's all kinds of holes in.
Were the coffins labeled?
No, they were like in a.
There's a big red D on the Dracula.
Right.
No. But maybe, Tim, that goes along with the whole macho thing, because he knew he should destroy Dracula, but he just knew he wasn't man enough, so he was going to start chipping away. The same with Dracula, by the way, chipped away at English social norms by going after the women.
Yeah,
and by the way, the wife was Melissa Stribling.
Thank you. What else did she do?
She was Scottish, and to be honest about it, besides Hammer, mostly TV.
Okay.
But like I said, if you think about Hammer, I think about Barbara Shelley. I think is probably I don't know if you can call her the Queen of Hammer, but she made a lot of Hammer movies.
And Carolyn Monroe did a couple too.
Who did?
Did Carolyn Monroe? Was it Carolyn Monroe?
Carolyn Monroe was in
1972.
Yes, she was. She was the first victim.
Carolyn Monroe from the Munster. I mean, not the Munsters. From the
Carolyn Monroe.
Carolyn Monroe.
She was a Bond girl. As a matter of fact, she tried off Roger Moore in The Spy Who Loved Me.
Oh.
She was like this gorgeous helicopter pilot, which is Carolyn Monroe. She's actually a gorgeous model, but she was flying a helicopter in that movie.
Cool.
Exactly.
Supermodels are like that.
But you probably know her because she was in one of those Sinbad films.
Exactly. As a matter of fact,
and you remember her because she probably showed more cleavage than most of the ones.
Or the one where the only one they ever showed her like involved in any kind of actual sex act would have been Captain Kronos, Vampire Hunter.
Yeah, well, an attempt to get away from Dracula and get a new vampire thing going, but you know what? It just wasn't the same without.
I really liked that movie. That was a very well done movie. It was a lot of fun.
But it didn't have, to me, it didn't pop the way, because. And
it all goes back to Christopher Lee.
He direct that, did he?
Who?
Because you keep talking about writers and actors, but one of the things people forget is that your better Hammer films were those directed by Terence Fisher.
Exactly. As a matter of fact, the two seminal movies, the horror Dracula and the Curse of Frankenstein, were both written by Jimmy Sangster, directed by Terence Fisher. Exactly.
Yeah.
So when you think about that, that started like the Hammer history.
Right.
What would horror be without that?
Because really, the best Hammer films are the ones with what I call the Holy Triad: Cushing, Lee, and Fisher. And anytime you see one of those three not in the thing, you get a decent film. Usually, you just don't get a great film.
But Hammer went through phases, and like later on, when they got into the 70s and they started doing the Karnstein trilogy, where they were all written by the same guy, but three different directors. But if you are a fan of erotic horror, that's the best part of Hammer's inventory right there. The Vampire Lovers, the Lust for Vampire, and the Twins of Evil.
Okay, so that's a recommendation.
I do know that you are a fan.
The Karnstein trilogy. All just okay. You're right. It's got a lot to do with it, but you got to remember, maybe men enjoyed it, but it was the women that were doing all the acting.
Well, they were showing lots of plot.
Yeah, exactly. Anyway, so
not to mention character development.
Hammer peaked really early, I think, and then they had a lot of other movies that are clearly worth watching, and I love every one of them and stuff like that. But if you look at the early ones that were made in the late 50s and early 60s, the cinematography was on a different level.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It was
gorgeous, beautiful, everything.
Yeah, and actually that style lends into the gothic horror that they were doing at the time.
Good point. Good point. I agree with you. That's got a lot to do with that too.
They look more like mainstream films. They don't look like cheap pieces of crap that you see, guys in rubber masks and crap like that.
Like the Satanic Rite of Dracula.
That and Gaiju and all the other ones, I'm okay with that. But let's face it, the one thing all those Japanese films and all those bad American films lacked, there was no place for Christopher Lee. Okay,
that's true. But he was tall enough to have been Godzilla. They could have found him a suit.
That's probably true. And remember, he was at one point in time, I don't know if he still is, in the Guinness Book of World Records. The Guinness Book of World Records for being the tallest man to play Dracula in a movie.
Well, I don't know who else would even be close.
Well, Franklin Jella would have been close. And nothing against Franklin Jella, but I mean,
I mean, you can say what you want. but Frank Langella and that Dracula movie was actually excellent.
I
Frank
did.
Langella Dracula. That was
There were some
a
weak points
classic.
in the
Well
film.
worth watching.
There were weak points to that film, and I think, well, we can discuss that one later. But, Christopher Lee is Christopher Lee. That's what I can say.
Okay. Well, and the legend. I agree with you.
And I've been told not to blush over him too much. Because I would love to be able to show the clip. You know the clip I'm talking about, Tim? From to the Devil a Daughter.
To the Devil Daughter. Yes, I remember the one that we're talking about.
Yeah, that's that Satanic Rite.
I'm pretty sure YouTube wouldn't let us do that, would they?
Only if we censor it.
Yeah, we gotta shave
put a
it.
big smile on his face
Then there won't be
and
We
any
can
point
put
in it.
Yeah,
we can
pretty
put
much.
Beth's face over the exposed area.
Smiling face right there. Yeah.
Yeah, that's an
And
idea.
man, the guy was in his mid-50s, looking like that from the back. And people say, well, maybe it wasn't him, but I'm thinking, who the hell are they going to get to be a 6 foot?
Actually,
Well, they could have done it with forced perspective, or put somebody up on a step stool or something.
well, no, it was clearly somebody's rear end.
Yeah.
It was clearly
Well,
somebody's rear
plus
end,
I
but-
could see Christopher Lee just saying, "Okay, fuck it, let's do it."
I'm a real man, and I don't give a crap.
Well, and I could see that considering the way things were in The Wicker Man.
Damn.
Like
that
there was a lot of strange stuff going on in The Wicker Man too.
one of his favorite movies that he ever made. Because let's face it, he broke out the role. He wasn't some type of beast. He was a very nuanced character.
Yes, he was.
Although, if there are any other people who are really interested in what Christopher Lee was, go find a movie called Serial. Not a great film, but the parts that he did in that film shine. He was the best part of the movie. Remember?
Well, this is
That was a good.
this is where we ask Beth, what role did he
79,
play?
Martin Mull?
What role
You
did
didn't
he
see
play?
that? He played Martin Mull's boss. Who
Yeah, he's like
he
the
finds
CEO
out
of the
later on
company.
is
Some
Yeah.
investment firm. Martin Mull's like some.
cracking Martin Mull's balls because he wasn't high enough in the firm. Then you find out that he on the weekends is wearing a helmet, running a gay biker.
Yes,
he
the
played
leader
the guy-
of the gay biker gang.
Who was in love with Tommy Smothers, by the way?
Of
That was
course,
the funniest part.
of course.
Things are a lot
In the
different
movie.
back
In the
then.
movie. In the movie.
Yeah. So
So
I guess
I think that's good for a first shot here. We certainly heard a bunch about Christopher Lee. We might start a separate channel just for that.
he deserves it, man.
Did he ever win the Oscar for
Heavy
anything?
metal albums.
Did he?
played
Did he?
indies.
Did he ever win the Oscar for anything?
Yeah,
He was-
because Oscars would have
I'm afraid
embraced
he was never
thinking.
nominated. He was never nominated, was he?
No, I
Okay,
think he was nominated for a BAFTA though for Jenna.
The thing is, none of that matters because we all know that the Oscars is bullshit. We could do a whole damn show on
Yeah,
that.
yeah, we can do that.
Yeah, we
one of these
can.
days.
We can. And
You know,
okay, let's-
like some of the ridiculous wins and stuff. The one that bugged me, the one that changed me forever was Kramer versus Kramer beating all that jazz. After that
Oh,
happened,
yeah.
I realized that there was no justice.
I'm with you because all that jazz is a beautiful movie.
And Chicago, I couldn't believe Chicago won.
Yeah.
Maybe
I
that's
agree
just
with you.
me.
That's actually pretty dopey. It's a dopey movie. But
But
anyway.
thought it was.
That'll be for another show. So we're
so
going to
what's the
go
next
ahead.
movie
What?
in line, Tim? What would the next film in line?
Canonically, the next one would be The Brides of Dracula.
Which weekend show? Because that guy who
So
thought
then-
he was going to take Christopher Lee's place.
So
is the guy
then that
anyway.
is what we're
Well,
aiming.
there's a couple of things that we might want to show. The big thing in that I think The Brides of Dracula does that no other movie ever did was Lee gets bitten by the Count's disciple, because he wants to turn Christopher Lee into one of them. He actually tells him, he says, "You're going to join us." So Lee's laying there, all messed up,
mean-
bleeding and stuff. I mean,
Cushing.
Cushing's laying there, and he's all, and he takes
Yeah.
a
That's a great scene.
branding iron and brands himself in the neck, and then pours holy water over it.
Burns out the sin. burns out the sin, man.
And, and then when he pours the holy water on, then they do a close up of his neck, showing how the bites are disappearing and the scar. And then they have the angelic music in the background.
So a manly man
You know,
saves himself.
And that's why that movie kind of
holy
works,
water
because
takes
you do have Cushing who can carry a film.
Okay.
Yes, he did. He carried that one too.
Well,
Because The Bride of Dracula is not really a good movie, but there's a couple of things in there that really recommend it. The guy kills his own mom and turns her into a vampire. Very, very, very sick.
So then our next episode will focus on The Bride of Dracula.
Yeah, well, let's see how this.